All right, in this lesson, we're going to be learning how to blur out the background as level 1 for any clip, photo, or image you have within Premiere Pro. And level 2, we're going to be covering how to blur out the background so that we can add some aspect, some text, or something to make it stand out. So the first thing we're going to be covering is blurring out the background just because we want it to be blurred out. For example, let's say that someone curses, you need to blur that out, or there's something in the image that needs to be blurred out. Well, we'll cover that. And then we'll be covering how to use it creatively within your projects. All right, so we use this a lot. Great skill, so definitely pay attention on this one. We're going to be coming to our effects panel. All right, if you guys don't see your effects panel open in Premiere Pro, you can select the editing or assembly tab, and then you want to come up to window and make sure that the effects is checked. All right, so this is your effects panel, and we want to make sure that we can search for our blur tool. All right, so if we search blur, you guys are going to see a couple different things. You guys are going to see different blur transitions, but what we're looking for is our Gaussian blur. All right, you guys can search Gaussian blur too, but I just remember it simply as blur. And you're going to take that Gaussian blur and you're going to drag it directly onto your video clip. Okay. Now, if you scroll down in the effects control panel, if you guys don't see the effects control panel on the top left, again, you can come to window and just make sure that your effects control panel is checked. Sorry, not the effects graphics. Effects control panel is checked. And then you're going to come down and you will see the settings for Gaussian blur. You can either close or open the Gaussian blur setting tab here. And all you're going to want to do is you can select to increase the level of blurriness. All right, and that is simply going to blur out your footage. Now, as you can see, if I really increase the blur, you'll see this black vignette around your frame or around your image. Why is because it's blurring the outside of this video as well, and that happens to be black, right? So if you want to, you can select repeat edge pixels, and what that does is it's just going to repeat the very last end range pixels and use those within the blur, so you won't be getting any sort of bleed into your blurring effect. Okay, I'm going to bring this blur back down so we can kind of see what's going on a little bit more. All right, let's bring it to a level 60. The blur dimensions, you have the option to either blur horizontally and vertically at the same time, which kind of gives you this more drowned out underwater feel. You also have the ability to just blur horizontally, right? So it's going to apply the blur horizontally. This is great if you're doing like a whip transition, for example. You can blur vertically. Again, this is great if you're doing like a push up or a push down transition. But if you're just blurring out something, horizontal and vertical is going to be the best bet. All right. So now you guys can apply the blur, but the question is, well, what if I just want to blur out, a specific building, right? And I want to keep all the other buildings in this image the same, or, if you're blurring out something inappropriate in your video, etc. You can come right under Gaussian blur and you can create what are called blur masks, okay, or just masks. But in this case, they're going to be masking out the blur. So you have the options to create a circular blur mask, right? We like to use this if someone swears. You can change, of course, the actual mask itself. You can increase the feather of the mask. You can increase the expansion of the mask, right? You can customize, you can change the opacity of the mask. All these things you can customize with whatever mask type you choose. So I just deleted that, but that was the ellipse mask. You could create a square or 4-point mask if you would like to do that. Again, you can change all the settings there, or you can simply grab a free drawing tool and you can actually cut out or draw your own shape using the pen tool. And then, for example, we can blur out, a specific building or a specific aspect of whatever footage you want to blur out. All right. So that is level 1. Okay. Just simply blurring out your subject and then actually being able to customize where that blur is going to take place. Level 2 is going to be transitioning with a blur and adding text or something. So oftentimes you'll see, the visual starts out clear, then it blurs, and then there's some text that appears. So I want to cover how to use blurs for that as well in this tutorial. How we're going to do that is we're going to be using keyframes. All right, so we're going to be using, again, these toggle animation keys. And what we want to do is, if this is the amount of blur that we want to go ahead and press a keyframe and tell Premiere Pro that at this point in time, when the keyframe icon is here, we want the blur to look like that. Okay, and then we can come, the standard is about 10 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, well, we can come to just the very beginning. Let's go out 10 frames out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to actually drag this keyframe to that point on my cursor. And then I'm going to come back to the very beginning. And I'm going to say we don't want any blur at the very beginning. So now I've actually keyframed and animated the blur effect. So it starts out without any blur, then 10 keyframes in, we have our horizontal and vertical blur at 40, okay? And on that frame right there, let's say we wanted to add some text. Could say, welcome to our city, right? Or whatever you want to say. All right, we can customize the text. We'll be covering the details of this in a different tutorial, but we can center the text, okay? We can change the style of the text by coming over and selecting a new font. All right, we can center that again, and we can add whatever kind of transition we would want. Let's say we can search in our effects for cross dissolve, and just simply add a cross dissolve transition. Okay, so then we can continue playing with this. I'm going to actually drag my keyframes to start a little further in the timeline, and I'm going to drag my text to start there as well. Okay, so as you guys can see now, level 2, what we've done is we've actually keyframed our blur. Okay, so it starts out without blur. We've added text, and we've blurred out the background as the text comes into the screen, which makes it a little more appealing, more easy to read, and allows you to kind of have more fun with these blur effects. All right, so lessons 1 and 2, that wraps them up. Hopefully in this video you guys got to learn how to use the blur effect, how to blur out a specific subject within your timeline if you'd like to, and then how to use the blur effect to blur out backgrounds with keyframes and changing the opacity so that you can add text or graphics or images. All right, so those are the lessons for the day.